A good Baptist church, maybe even a good predominantly African American Baptist church, because historically we love our testimony. We like to tell the story. We have songs that talk about telling the story, and this psalmist is one who tells the story. We think about not forgetting Brother LaRon Marshall because we don't want to forget what we've been through and where we've been. I think the Marshalls could definitely talk about that because not long ago they celebrated a year of marriage. So they didn't retell the story, but I had the privilege of going to their house and they took out the cake from last year that they had saved, and we ate the cake and we remembered the fact that they're married. There's a testimony that was there in the cake, a testimony in the house, a testimony in the couple. We love to tell our stories. We love to be able to remember the good times. The good times sometimes seem like they are few. And as a matter of fact, we might ask for a minute for Thelma and for JJ and for Esther to come in here for a minute to tell us about good times. We grew up watching some things about good times. Funny thing is, Sister Lisa, and I know that Deacon David Hodge can testify to this because he and I like some of the same old programs. It's kind of funny that the Jeffersons, they lived in a high-rise apartment and they were rich. And yet the JJ and his family, the Evans family, lived in a high-rise and they were poor. You know, there was a doorman at one place and there were thieves at the other. Sometimes we will look at a situation and we think that things are not so good, but even as we think about the Evans family, even though there was tragedy, they had laughter and some good times. You know, all of our lives come with those ups and come with those downs, come with obstacles and situations and problems. If you live life, you realize that there's sometimes going to be some bad stuff and some good stuff. But as Dr. Kevin Dudley preached from this pulpit a few years ago, he said that everybody wants the blessing, but nobody wants the byproduct. He said, in other words, you want to own a cattle of sheep and a cattle of cows and bulls, and you want horses and whatnot, but then when it comes poop time, nobody wants to clean it up. In other words, he said that every blessing comes with a problem. You know, if you have the best car in the world, every now and then it needs some service. If you got a house, it needs some dusting and some mopping and all of that. And so there are blessings, and then sometimes there are those things that we don't like so much. But this particular psalmist has the good sense to look back and to realize that, yeah, we go through some stuff to maintain life, Sister Thelma, but at the end of the day, we can still be glad about it. This psalmist has sense enough to look back and realize that he has not brought himself, but only God has brought him. If you look back over your life, I tell you, if you're old enough, you can realize that there were times where you thought you were not going to make it, and yet the Lord showed up and he made a way.
Hallelujah.
Let me tell you, the Lord, he will make a way. And as we often say, he'll make a way out of no way. Where there was no path, he will create one. One of the things that I love about the Ohio State University, a wonderful place in the world, is to step out on the oval. Anyone who's ever driven by it or has looked at it or walked across it, you realize that the oval is made up of pathways. And if you stand and you look long enough, you will realize that there is no particular pattern to its pathways. Sister Brittany Marshall, as you walk across the campus, many times you realize that those pathways go in so many directions and there's so many ways to get to class. If you stand in the new library, in the new William Oxley Library, and you look out of the windows on the top floor, you can see the oval perfectly. And all of the paths seemed very arbitrary. Well, I remember as a kid growing up, when my Aunt Jean was matriculating through the university, we would take her and I would ride sometime as they would drop her off for a class. These were the days when you could drive straight down Lane Avenue and Neal was open. And you would drive straight up to the building. There were no parking restrictions and all of that. It was a much smaller campus at that particular time. And back then, the Oval didn't look like it looks today. Back then, what the Oval looked like is the Oval looked like what we've seen. If you ever grew up in the neighborhood, you realize in every neighborhood there is a path. If you've ever lived in the hood, and for those of you who are so affluent that you've never had an alley, and you've never had anything like a path, then you may not understand this. But for those of us who were poor enough to realize that there are alleyways and that there are pathways, whether they be through fields or through schools or whether they be through people's backyards. You've often saw those pathways that are about that narrow that you know somebody's bicycle or somebody's been walking through, and that path has been created by traffic. I'm going somewhere with this. That path has been created with traffic. It hasn't been created because someone had some science and said, this is going to be a quick route through here. They just simply decided that I'm going to walk this way, and over time, more people walked that way. That's what the Oval used to look like. It used to look like people who were trying to keep beautiful grass going, but students would not allow it. Because students wanted the quickest way to get to class, so they didn't take sidewalks. They took the grass and they made pathways. And later, the university realized that we cannot, Jashawn, keep these pathways from popping up. So rather than to beat them, we might as well join them. And so, Brother Wesley, and I know you know a lot about OSU, those pathways became paved. And so when you look today, it doesn't look like any pattern, and the reason there's no pattern is because those pathways just naturally and organically came to be. But guess what? That's what our life looks like. Our life looks like us trying to keep everything looking symmetrical and looking well and manicured, and God making ways every time we needed one. God will make a way where there is no way. He will create a path where there's never been a path before. The very thing that you think you can't do, God can do. The very obstacle that's in your way, God can move it in His time and in His way. I'm glad that He's a way maker. I just watched Him do things in my life over and over again, and this psalmist says, I know Him to be a way maker. Well, let me give you 3 quick points, and let us go home as I tell you about the Lord as a way maker. Psalm 114, verse 1, he says, when Israel went out of Egypt, the house of Jacob, from a people of strange language, let me tell you, the Lord will make a way when the oppressors talk funny. The Lord will make a way when the oppressors talk funny. We're still yet in the month of our church anniversary, and I think that sometimes people talk funny. So before we moved in this building, we thought that we could expand the old building. Our parking lot was full. We needed some more parking space. People would tell me, I came to visit y'all's church but couldn't get in because I couldn't find a parking space. And so we were hoping to negotiate. We were thinking that we could negotiate with one of our neighbors to buy another piece of land in order to build a parking lot and then build onto the church. And so initially, one piece of land connected to our old building was offered to us at $45,000. And they said, we sell it to you for $45,000. And at that time, we didn't take that offer. And so we continued to negotiate, and finally they said to me, they said, well, you can use the land and just throw some gravel back there and use it as a parking lot and so on and so forth. And so we talked to them and said, well, we're getting ready to order the gravel. And they said to us, no, we don't want you to order the gravel. we don't want you, and we will not let you use the land for parking. I said, well, I thought, Sister Brooks will remember, you were around on the trustee board at that time, I thought you said we could use it for parking. Well, I've been traveling and I've been coming by the church on Sunday, and I see that your parking lot is full. And now that I see that your parking lot is full, I realize that you really, Brother Timothy, need that land of mine. And I think that I would rather you not to park there for now, because I want the pressure to be on. So that you will realize, and your church will realize, that they need the property. Well, okay, let's sit down and talk about the cost of the property. How much would you like? Well, I think my property is worth $145,000. Now, not 45, but 145. And I tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to give you a gift. I'm going to allow you to purchase the property for $117,000, and that's a gift. Okay, all right, that's a gift. So I said to the Lord, as the fellow was riding off into the day, I said to the Lord, I've never known you to let your people be hostage to anyone. That was what I said to God. I said, I've never known you to allow your people to be hostage to anyone. Well, I want you to know that not only did we not pay $117,000 for a gift, but we sit in a building whereby we were able to move, and they gave us $25,000 in the end. So therefore, that is a gift. See, God works in ways that we can't work, and when folks are talking funny, God can still work through it. Amen. Don't never be afraid of what people are saying to you about your limitations and what you can't do, because every time man says you can't, I'll show you a God that says you can't. Don't you let nobody hold you back by their language because they talking crazy. Keep on listening to God no matter what everybody else says about you. No matter what they say about your situation, no matter what somebody has to say smart, talking silly, go on about your business, because God can bless us even when our oppressors talk crazy. So just because you don't agree, or just maybe you don't even understand what the craziness is coming, just keep on moving on, because God will make a way in spite of what they got to say. But then in verses 2 and 7 of 1:14, he says, Judah was the sanctuary and Israel his dominion. The sea saw it and fled. Jordan was driven back. The mountains skipped like rams, and the little hills like lambs. What aileth thee, O thou sea, that thou fleetest? Thou Jordan, that thou wast driven back, ye mountains that ye skipped like rams, and ye little hills like lambs. Tremble, thou earth, at the presence of the Lord, at the presence of the Lord, or the God of Jacob. See, your obstacles are removed. What the writer is talking about here is he remembers the fact that Moses and the children of God, the children of Israel, arrived at the Red Sea one day, Deacon Arnett Hodge. And when they got there, behind them was Pharaoh's army ready to kill them, ready to do bad things to them, either to kill them or to re-enslave them. So finally they found themselves at a place, Brother Danny, that seemed like they were between a rock and a hard place. Sometimes life gets like that. You get to a place where it seems like you are backed up against the wall or pushed off of a cliff. Fact is, no matter how bad it looks, we still serve a God. Text starts by saying that even the elements, the mountains, the hills, they saw God's presence. All right. See, when God is there, it does not matter what the obstacle might be. It does not matter, Brother Kirby, whether it seems like we can't get there or not. But when God is involved, we can sing the chorus with Diana Ross. See, Diana Ross said that, ain't no mountain high enough to keep me from you. See, when God is involved, it does not matter what everything looks like around you. Doesn't matter what the obstacles might be. It may seem like somebody said, well, you don't have enough education to do it. Somebody else told you you didn't have enough money to do what God has placed in your heart. Somebody said you're too old to do what God has called you to do. You're too young to do what God has called you to do. But let me tell you that God can bless you and he can make a way out of nowhere. The scripture said that the mountains just got up and just started skipping away. Don't you realize that when God is in it, no matter what it is you're trying to do, the Lord can make a way out of nowhere. Somebody ought to be happy because you remember that God has done it for you before, and you realize that God can do it again. No matter what the situation is, we must realize that God can move the obstacles out of our way. Ain't nothing too hard for God. There's nothing too difficult. And if we just think about his goodness and all that he's done for us, we realize that the Lord will make a way. He makes a way no matter what our oppressors are saying, Brother Alex. He moves the obstacles out of our way even when it seems like we're between a rock and a hard place. But then resources start to appear. Look there at verse 8 and you'll see it for yourself. It says in verse 8 that which turned the rock into a standing water and flint into a fountain or a fountain of waters. See, everything moves by the power of God. And sometimes the Lord can take and turn something that you didn't even think he could do that and make it do something totally different. Brother Al, sometimes you look at something and you think, well, it's only got one thing I can do with that. But when God finished with it, you ask them about that peanut. And they'll tell you, say, it can do more than peanut butter. When God starts doing things, you'll find out that he can do whatever he wants to do. He can make a this into a that. He can do whatever he wants to do. Now, last I heard, it's supposed to be water coming from Flint. I was a Cub Scout down at the church on the corner. And I walked down there. And we would take macaroni and glue it to stuff and make macaroni oil. Then we would tie knots. You know, Cub Scout kind of things. We would learn our oath and secret handshakes, you know, Cub Scout kind of things. Then I graduated from the Cub Scouts. That was the church on the corner. And I joined the Boy Scouts. That was the church down the road. The Cub Scouts was in one church on the corner, and the Boy Scouts was on the same road but down the road at another church. And down there it was a little bit more complicated than Cub Scout, because then you had to have hiking socks, and you had to have your uniform just right, and you had to start trying to earn your badges. One of the things that you try to do, as you know, Boy Scouts are always trying to do, and that is you have to learn about fire. You got to understand fire safety. You got to know how to build a fire. You got to know these kinds of things. One of the reasons you got to know that is because you realize that if you end up in extreme temperatures, that you need a fire. If you want to fix some food in the wild and you find an animal that you can trap, you got to be able to heat him to eat him, so you got to have some fire. Through the night, if it gets too cold, you got to be able to put together a fire for your campsite. You throw some rocks over there and get them warm, and you put those down up under your padding so that it's warm enough for you to sleep through the night. Keep your core body temperature right. You got to learn something about some fire. So one of the things that you find oftentimes in a kit, a survival kit, is you will find a fire starter, and usually a natural fire starter has to do with some flint rocks. For those of you who didn't take that little geology or class to learn about these rocks, let me tell you, flint is the kind of rock that if you spark them together good enough, fast enough, and you got enough dry materials around, you'll get a spark here and there, and a fire will emerge. So therefore, Sister Magwood, when I read this text, and it says that a fountain will come out from the fire rocks, that tells you that God can do whatever he wants to do. How does water come out of a rock that's known for fire? That rock is known to heat things up. That rock is known to start something. But God said, I can make it give water if I want to. Don't you realize that God can do whatever he wants to do? And maybe you thought that you could only do one thing, but God has blessed you that you've got a whole lot of things inside of you, because God will make a way out of nowhere. You said, I need more money, but let me tell you, sometimes you don't need more money. You just need God to reduce the price. You see, somebody could have said that about 4410. You need more money to buy 4410. No, God reduced the price to buy 4410. Sometimes folk don't realize that God can bless you. I've heard that they're beginning to now take the heart, and they used to have to figure out where to find the vein, and now they can get a vein out of a hog and put it in a human. Wow, God got some things that we ain't never seen before. They can take a petri dish and grow a pancreas. Don't you know God can do some things that you've never seen before? The very thing that you've been waiting on God to do, the reason you're waiting is because you're waiting on God to put it together for you. See, I hear members of this church, Sister Vicki Williams, I hear them wonder, why has God made me wait so long? Sometimes God has you waiting while he's creating the thing to take care of the problem that you got. See, I had a floor as I go to my seat that I was trying to figure out. I wanted to put some ceramic tile on my floor. And when I got ready to put the ceramic tile on the floor, all of the folk came and they said, well, this is going to be expensive because we've got to have special tools to cut the tile to make it fit on the floor properly. Then we've got to have all of these concrete blockers to go on the upstairs level and all of that. And I said, well, heretofore we've been doing this kind of ourselves, and we need to figure out how we can do this ourselves. How do we get the materials here without a truck? How do we do all of that? And so Brother Saunders and I, we had gone through the hardware store many times, and we would look at the concrete blocks, and one day we got bold enough and said, let's buy one of these and carry it and see what we can do with it. And so it took both of us to lift it, and we got it in the truck, lots of hassle brother and all, and we were trying to figure out how we could cut this thing. And so we experimented on it, and all of the different tools that we used, Sister Thelma, we couldn't cut it. We couldn't cut it, sister, no matter what we did. We couldn't figure out how to get this thing shaped like we wanted. We didn't have anything hard enough to cut it, and we realized we either had to rent a tool or to buy a tool. Either way, it was going to be expensive, and we said, we really can't afford that right now. So a few months passed, and a few more months passed, and finally, one day, we were walking through the hardware store. By the way, Brother Saunders and I, we walked through the hardware store like women walk through Macy's. We love the hardware store, so we're walking through Home Depot one day, and we're just kind of perusing the aisle, and we have our wish list for the church and for our prospective homes, and so we're just looking around, and all of a sudden, as we were walking through the ceramic tile section, we looked, and there was a sign that said, Wonder Board. Wonder Board. What is Wonder Board? Wonder Board is a blocker or a pad for ceramic tile. It said Wonder Board. So we called the man over because we saw the sign, but it didn't tell a lot of things. And so we called them and said, what is Wonder Board? He said, well, Wonder Board is a new material. This is where you won't have to use the traditional concrete block. They've just created this. It's a fabric that you can cut with a carpet knife, with a box cutter. You can cut it, shape it however you want to, and feel it how light it is. And so one of us was picking it up, carrying it around like we were Supermen. These things are big panels, and we just carrying them around. And so I went home, I measured the space, I came back, I bought enough, and loaded those into the hatchback. Didn't even need a truck. Loaded them into the hatchback because they were so light, and we took them on home and got them there. And before, Brother Saunders and I couldn't cut them ourselves, Sister Tamara, but what we realized after we got them home, that Shante and Brittany came into the house, and with a box cutter, they started cutting out and carving out those things that Brother Saunders and I couldn't do before. Now you can cut it with a box cutter. They cut it and they put it on the floor, and before you know it, we had ceramic tile. Sometime while you're wondering how you can do it, God is creating the thing that you need to take you through. If you wait and be patient long enough, there is always a blessing, and God can create and will create a way out of no way. Where you've been up against the wall, where you've been had your back against the wall, God will remove the wall in his time. And when he does, all you've got to do is like this psalmist and thank God for what he's done, because he's already made a way for you. You're here today, and that is a way. The fact that you woke up this morning, the obstacles that were on the road, the things that happened this morning, somebody didn't wake up, other folks had in car accidents, but you are here because God has made a way for you to be here. The things you saw and the things you didn't see, God has protected you and blessed you from the snare of the enemy, and we ought to be glad because he's a way maker.
Yes, he is.
And he has made a way out of no way.